Good morning. Thank you so much, Salon Public Stylist, and those of you that are here today to view French Balayage. My name is Stephanie Cashmere, and I'm the Regional Educator for Loreal Professional in Los Angeles, California. And today I'm going to share with you a technique we refer to as French Balayage that anybody can utilize to get a client in and out in less than an hour. It's going to be 4 quick techniques, 4 placements that'll give you a full head of balayage, again, in less than an hour. So thank you so much for joining me. For those of you who don't know, French balayage is a little bit different than the American balayage because French balayage doesn't contain saturation. So the word balayage itself means surface painting, which is a French term. And so with that being said, we're really just painting the surface of the hair and we're applying it in different points. So we like to use a single point technique, a double point technique, and a triple point technique, which I'll be showing you today. So we are going to start with our sectioning in the nape of the head. And I'm going to go ahead and get my product mixed up here. And you can use whatever product you like to paint with. I'm going to be using an open air clay lightener due to the fact that I'm only going to be surface painting with it, so I'm not going to be enclosing the technique at all. All right. And if you have any questions as I'm going, please feel free to type those into the chat box. So another thing that's a little different about French balayage is we tend to like to paint off of a planchette. So a planchette is actually a small board, again, a French word. And this is what I like to use for my tool. So I think setup is everything. The smarter and the cleaner we can work, the better our results are. So you'll notice that I'll always be using my planchette to paint with. I'm going to consider this my well brush. So this brush is going to be the only brush I leave in my bowl that I pick up product from. So I'm actually only going to be using it to load up my planchette. And I'll give you an example of that. When loading up the planchette, we like to load up one side. That way you have a clean side if you were to do some kind of saturation. But really, you'll always see me picking up my product from the left side of the board. So again, it's just those little tips that help everything as you're working, especially when we're trying to execute a full head of French balayage. So again, this is my planchette loaded up. And I'm going to be using 2 different balayage brushes. So this is the brush that I'll use to pick up my product. And when I mentioned picking up the product from the board off to the left, whatever size line I'm looking to lay down as a balayage point, I'm going to actually pick up off the planchette like that. So if I wanted to lay a really thick line for a bolder impact, I'm going to pick up a little bit more lightener. So that's my balayage brush. I'm going to keep that separate for my application. And then when we go around to the face frame, I'm going to actually switch over to a little bit of a smaller brush. It makes it a little more controllable when we're working around the hairline. So I'm going to load this up again and we will get started. And we're going to be starting with the nape of the head. And this is a super, super simple go-to technique. It's great for a first-time balayage if a client comes in and just wants balayage for the first time. Or if you're looking to maybe just enhance and lighten the current client's hair. So we're going to go probably about, depending on the client's hair density and how much hair that they actually have, I'd go about 1 inch to 2 inches up onto the nape. So that's where we're going to take our first section. And this section is going to be 1 balayage application. So again, you don't want it to be too wide because we're going to be taking 1 section, which will be our first triple point here. So I'm going to go with about 1 inch of hair in depth at her nape here. And the cleaner our partings are when we are balayaging, the cleaner our work ends up being again, because you're able to get right where you want with that application. Another thing too, since we will be pivoting off the crown, you want to be mindful where you're actually clipping the hair when we're painting. So we don't want to clip into their natural growth pattern. So if you notice, I took my second clip and I kind of just clipped the remainder of her length on top of her head, so I have a clean working space for the balayage. All right, so again, like I said, French balayage is surface painting. You have multiple options when working with it. One way would be to work with perforated wrap and your cotton. But the reason I'm not going to be using the perforated wrap is because I'm using a clay lightener. So I just want it to encapsulate on its own, but you have those options. And so here I'm going to, in this section, I'm going to just check into it. So when we're working with balayage, we like to check in to the hair. That's how we get a clean section. And what that does is provides padding underneath the hair where we're not painting, or negative space so that we have a little bit more dimension. So when I say checking into the hair, I'm basically making a check mark with the end of my comb, which in turn is just giving me a perfect section to paint. So that's where we're going to be painting. I'm going to go a little bit bigger on that since we're just going to be taking one section here. Do that a little more like that. That way we've got nice negative space on the side. Body positioning is everything. So you do want to be pretty comfortable. You'll notice with balayaging, you'll have your elbow up. You want it to be a very gentle stroke when you are applying that product. And have your clients actually work with you. So if you need them to bend their head when you're working with the nape, definitely have them do that. That way you're able to create that perfect surface to paint on. So this is going to be my first section. And here I mentioned we're going to be doing a triple point. Bring her a little more. So with that being said, I'm going to apply off to the side. So I'm going to pick up my product and I'm going to apply in zone B. So we like to call this zone B, which would be, we have A, B, and C. So when we're originally laying down the product, we like to start about an inch down from the root in zone B, and then work it back up softly into zone A. And then you'll begin to connect your points. So the reason we like to start in zone B is because if you were to directly start in zone A with a lot of product, it makes it really hard for you to get that beautiful seamless blend. So here, that's what we're looking for, is a really seamless, natural looking look. So I've got my application in zone 1 and 2, or zone A and B. You'll see I've created those 2 points. So now I'm going to go in, since I mentioned this is our triple point, and I'm going to just apply a point right here in the center of that. And same situation, starting in zone 2, working it back up into zone 1. And now at this point, so that I can get a brighter result towards the end, I'm going to continue to just completely paint the surface and kind of diffuse that lightener here. And if you notice, I'm never losing hold of the hair. So I'm keeping really great tension the whole time, keeping my planchette in my hand as well, and just picking up the product as needed. So I need a little bit more since we did do the triple point here. So I'm going to go ahead and just work it down. And then one thing with French balayage too is you want it to look really seamless, like the sun did it, and that's not easy to do. So working smarter, not harder, and stepping back and actually looking at your work definitely gives you a clear view on what's happening. So this is what our triple point looks like. You can see it's got a clean underside. So none of my lightener has saturated at all. And I'm going to go ahead and just drop that down and we'll take our next section. So simple, simple. That's your whole entire nape. I'm going to reload my planchette and drop down my next section. And again, because this is clay, it's already starting to encapsulate. It's a 19% clay formula that I'm using, so I'm not afraid of anything marbleizing once I drop down the next section. And we're going to do the same thing. We'll take about an inch, inch and a half, depending on how much hair your client has. The goal would be to do 3 to 4 sections in the back of the head, working from the nape up, and then we'll finish, like I said, at the crown with our pivoting points. So that looks like a pretty good section here. Okay, and this is where we're actually going to break it into 2 sections. So you see at this point, the headspace has widened a bit. So so here we want to make sure that we are getting everywhere and that we're getting the results we're looking for. So the best way to do that would be to break this into 2 sections and create 2 double points. So now you've seen our triple point. We're going to work into double points And then you totally have the option to play with triple or double, depending again on the headspace. But then we're going to finish the top with the single point. And you can see this mannequin here already has a bit of a root shadow going on. So that's a great canvas to start if you're looking for a lot of dimension, but more of a natural finish. And this can be done at the same time as well if you wanted to add in a root smudge. So my double point again, starting in zone 2, working my way up to zone 1, and then back down. Zone 2, working my way back into zone 1, and then back down. And you have complete freedom and control over how high you go with the lightener or how much diffusion you're getting out of that. So let me turn her a little more just so you can see. I'm taking this just a little bit higher to diffuse this a tad bit more since we're taking less sections. I want brighter results in the sections that we are taking. And since we're surface painting, again, we're not going to be saturating. We're not going to get the brightest results from just painting the surface, but we're going to get the most seamless and natural. So that would be what our double point looks like. And now we're going to do the same thing on the next section. So here, just the same exact thing, creating another double point to make sure that we have that balance. And if you notice, this time I didn't check into it in this section. So I didn't want to leave as much negative space because I wanted to paint that whole surface. So here I'm just taking the whole section and creating those points. So again, this will be a double point, starting in zone 2, working our way back up to zone 1. And then connecting those zones together. So once you're happy with zone 1 and 2, you can go in and paint zone 3. One of the best tips is don't slide down into zone 3, so that would be the ends of the hair, until you're completely happy with how zone 1 and zone 2 look. It's a lot harder to go back and correct your balayage than it is to fix it in the moment. So again, kind of step back because what you see is what you'll get when it's done. And again, with surface painting, it's going to be a lot more seamless. So that ends up being our second section. So here we did our triple point and our 2 double points. We're going to drop down one more horizontal parting. And this would end up being the 3rd section here. And you can see we're already about halfway up the head. We're at the ear. So with just that few sections, but these bold results, it's very, very time saving behind the chair. So again, we're going to drop down just another inch section. And now the head space gets a little bit wider. So at this point, I'm probably going to play with the techniques. Since we started with a triple point, I'll probably break the 2 of these into a triple point, or you can break it into 3 double points. So again, that would be totally up to you, what you're looking to do, and the results you want. So by doing the triple point, it's going to save me a little bit more time. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here, but this time I'm going to actually check into that section just to create a little bit more of that negative space, like I mentioned. And then what it does is you see it creates a V shape here. And that V shape is what's providing me that flat surface to paint on, but also that padding so that I don't end up marbleizing or having color leak through. Another quick tip that's really great is we like to say thumb tension pull. So if you notice, I'm thumbing the hair, pulling the tension, and just making sure I have that perfectly flat surface to paint onto. So that's really important. And if there's any hairs that are in the way, move them out of the way to make everything a lot smoother. All right, so here we're going to go in, and I said we'll do a triple point on that one. So here we go. So we went triple, doubles, now back into triple, just to save a little bit more time. Starting in zone 2. And some people like to do one side completely and then move on to the other. I like to kind of balance it out a little bit more, especially if I'm going to be adding in my 3rd point. So there's no right or wrong way. That's really just whatever your comfort level is. But the one takeaway you really want is starting in zone 2. So we want to make sure, I'm going to go over the computer. You want to make sure here that we are starting right here and seamlessly working it back up into zone 1. So that would be a triple point, and now I'm going to drop it down into my zone 3. And if you notice, I'm painting all the way up to my fingertips. So that's the reason why I'm wearing gloves, because I do end up completely painting it all the way down the strand. So that would be our triple point there, and then we're going to do the same exact thing on the opposite side. And if you notice, by loading up just the one side of the planchette, hopefully that's useful to some people, but it makes it so easy to get a really clean application. So I'm never really needing to grab for a towel or wash my hands off in between service. I'm not getting lightener where I don't want it. It's just a whole different deal when you have the right tools and you're set up for success. So here again, this will be our triple point, and this is our 3rd section. I'm checking into it. Create that padding. My ankle is a little weird, so I'm going to redo that so I have a better section for you. Okay, and again, checking in, leaving those few pieces of negative space. This is only our 3rd section, and we are this high up onto the head already. I'm going to actually come over to this side, that way you can see the proper application. There we go. So again, this is going to be 4 different techniques, 4 different sections, really just one technique, the single, double, and triple point. But it's a really, really easy way to navigate a full head of balayage in under an hour and provide really seamless but beautiful results. So you can build on them appointment to appointment. And I think that's the truest thing to share with your guests, is that balayage really is a customized bespoke service. And nobody gets the same exact color service done with balayage. So sometimes it takes a few appointments to duplicate what the sun actually creates to give them that really soft and beautiful sun-kissed look. And it definitely gets better with time. So I love going back in and kind of just adjusting things and providing a little bit more brightness. That's what we're looking for. All right, so that is that section there. So that is our 3rd section. We're going to move into one more horizontal, which again, you can see we are above the ear now with that section. So it's going to leave us with one section. We're going to pivot off the top. So you'll see here's our 2 triple points to break up the back of the head there. And we will do one more horizontal parting, or you can do a V parting here. So I'm going to actually flip into a different kind of parting for you to see. That way you can see another way to work with the balayage points really simple. So instead of doing the horizontal here, I'm going to actually just create a V. So I'm dropping down those corners above my horizontal section. This will be our 4th and final balayage section in the back before we pivot. So this is just going to be a simple V. So you can see I'm going to drop it down. So it's really just a V at the crown of the hair. So I'm just going to get all of this hair out of the way. This is what we'll pivot off of with our single points. And right now we're just going to go back in and again follow what we've been doing. So in my opinion, due to the mannequin's head space here on the hair that we have left, I'm going to go ahead and do 2 more triple point sections because they tend to be a little bit wider here. So we'll go and apply those. And I'm still using my regular balayage brush. I'm going to use the small brush around the face framing. All right, so this one, again, we'll check into just to create a little bit more negative space here. And less is definitely more when it comes to French balayage. So with it, because we're looking for seamless results, we don't want it to look too highlighted or the application to be too thick. We want it to be really soft looking. And that all comes from the amount of tension and the actual application, again, that you apply. So if you notice, my elbow's up the whole time I'm painting, and I'm holding my brush at a 45-degree angle. So I'm not going in hard. I'm going in at an angle, and I'm just slightly just working that product down, and it just nicely just smooths out down that hair strand because I have perfect tension. So here we're going to create a triple, and like I said, we're working a little bit higher up to the crown. So I want this to be just a little bit brighter. That way she has more dimension built in. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in my triple point here and kind of work it up softly. So then that would be my triple point off to that side. And then we're going to do the same exact thing on this side. And I'm talking about this, and this has been less than 20 minutes, and we've almost executed the whole back of the head. So can you imagine how quick it is actually just doing this technique behind the chair? It's really, really worth having a go-to, just kind of roadmap for balayage, because a lot of people get overwhelmed, and it is definitely a technique that is taught. Not everybody knows it right off the bat. So it's nice to not be discouraged by it, but to actually have a go-to so that you feel comfortable doing it, as well as comfortable retouching it. One of the hardest parts to continue providing seamless results is having a retouch that you can actually duplicate every time. So consistency within your application. So that's one of the other things. If you follow the same kind of roadmap, so to speak, when you balayage, it's a lot easier for you to stay consistent if the client's happy with their hair, which we know they are. All right, working this down into my zone 3. And again, the whole thing that makes French balayage different is the fact that we've got a clean underside on all of this painting. So none of it is saturated. All of it is just surface painting, which is going to provide that really soft dimension. So here we've got our last triple points there, and then we're going to drop down that final upside down triangle, and we're going to try and determine the growth pattern here. So everybody has a natural growth pattern, and one of the biggest mistakes I find when teaching balayage is a lot of us stylists don't take into consideration the direction the hair is growing. So even with a mannequin right now, I can identify how her hair growth pattern is looking to me, or what's happening. Where's that swirl coming in? I'm going to bring it a little closer so you can see. But normally, if we move their hair around, we can always kind of just see what's going on there, and it's going to expose itself. So like here with the mannequin, it's splitting completely off to the side. So with that being said, that's going to be my focus as to where I check into to take my points. So since I know she has a cowlicure or growth pattern, that's going to open up if she's not shampooing every day. I've taken into consideration with that V section I made because it kind of fell right below it. But we need to make sure that when this happens and it does separate into the natural growth pattern, that she has a balayage piece coming from here and coming from here so that she's not left with a dark hole. So we're going to go ahead and just pivot off that growth pattern a couple single point pieces. And in this case, they can be pretty small, but we're still going to just be painting the surface there. So on this, since I am going to do single points and my other brush has a little more lightener on it, I'm going to go ahead and use my small brush for this. So the first one, again, I said we're going to pivot off the crown. So I'm going to kind of just let the hair speak to me and take the pieces that I feel need to be lightened for the most amount of balance. So same thing, thumb, tension, pull. I'm always really creating that soft surface and making sure that I have a smooth surface to paint, especially important when we're working with textured hair or any kind of curl formations that make it a little bit harder to surface paint. Okay, so again, this is a smaller point. I'm just working it up into zone 1. I always like to use the end of my actual brush as an eraser. So when we're surface painting, if you ever get any off to the side, which I did pretty good there, but it happens and it's great to make sure we're not putting too much product on if we're only painting the surface. Think of the end of your comb or your brush as an eraser. So all I'm going to do is keep that tension really nice, and I'm going to just glide that comb on the underside to pick up any extra product if there was any there. But nothing really seemed to go on the bottom. Since I've got pretty good tension, I'm really just surface painting perfectly there. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that one piece. I'm going to go back in now and turn her and see where else I feel. And again, I mentioned because for growth pattern, it's going to be important to take it right off the growth pattern. So here's where her hair was splitting. You can see that there. So I'm going to go ahead and take that piece right directly off of the growth pattern. So it's where it's opening up. And we're going to paint that piece. So let me drop it down a little more. So I think you can see right here, that's where her hair is swirling. This is going to be the piece I'm taking off to the side. So knowing it actually opens up and goes that way, I'm going to paint this side of it. That way, when it falls, she ends up having a light piece there. So it's really just being mindful about what's going on with the client naturally and how we can provide the best results. And again, that's what makes balayage such a bespoke service because of the fact that no service will ever be the same. Everybody's always different and wanting something different, and it's something that's completely customizable and buildable. All right, so then we're going to drop down that piece. And then ultimately, pivoting around the crown ends up being like 5 to 6 single point applications. So really it just depends on, again, the headspace and how much hair or how much brightness you're looking to get out of it. Here I'm going to take another point. And this one I actually am going to paint off to this side. So I checked into it. You can see that it is a little check mark here. And I'm going to paint off to this side now. So I'm just letting the hair talk to me, depending on the growth pattern, what side would be better, because when it falls, it's going to open up in that crown area here. And single points don't necessarily have to be just one point like this. If they're thicker, you can start in one point and then get a little bit wider as you go down the strand. So you'll notice as we move into the face framing, we'll change the technique a little bit more into that. So do one more. So this would be our third piece here on the crown area. I'm going to get a little bit of a better section there. And again, none of this has been done with any cotton because of the fact that I am using a clay lightener. So you can do this with anything that's going to encapsulate on its own or anything you feel good about. If you're trying to do this technique with a lightener that possibly swells, then I would definitely recommend using perforated wrap, as we like to refer to, and using cotton. And the thing with that, the Carita sisters actually in France, way back in the day, started doing hair in that manner. So they started using cotton, which was never seen before. And so that's truly why balayage became such a French technique, because not only was it started in France, but the Carita sisters were French. So it's pretty cool to see how it became totally mainstream since the 2000s. And now it's just a technique that everybody is interested in and looks great on everyone. Okay, so then that's going to be our 5th point, and so I think there's room for one more, so we're going to go ahead and just do one more single point here in the crown, which would create, that would end up being 6 pieces on the crown. And that would complete the whole entire back of the head. And also, if you notice, I'm always working in a downward motion when it comes to my painting. That's another kind of point of difference when it comes to balayage, hair painting, and French balayage. So when we're really surface painting, so that you're not roughing up that surface, you'll notice your brush is always in a downward motion. So I'm applying it with a 45-degree angle, and I'm actually applying it down versus roughing up the cuticle and creating separation in that hair. So all of those things are the differences. So here we go, we've completed that back. So we've got our 6 single points that'll come together beautifully. And then that ended up just being our 4 sections. So we started with our horizontal triple point, followed by 2 horizontal double points, followed by 1 more horizontal section with 2 triple points. And then we pivoted the crown area with 6 single points. So super simple. So now that brings us into the front hairline and face framing balayage pieces. So here, we're actually going to start with the face framing. So I've already pre-sectioned this mannequin's hair. And what I did here was she's off to a side part naturally. So again, that's something we always want to talk about when you are surface painting is how do they part their hair. If we're painting the surface of their hair off to a side part and then they go down the middle, we may not be able to see the balayage that we've created. So we want to make sure that we're very, very clear with how they part their hair. And then with the face framing, what we're going to end up doing is it requires different body positioning when you are looking to provide clients with brighter results that like to pull their hair back. So this technique is going to give you the ability to create all of that lightness in here so that the client sees it, but also get that really great brightness throughout. So in order to do that, like I mentioned, I've already pre-sectioned the hairline. And what I did was I just did my standard T-parting. So we started with a nape and I just clipped away the front. This section here for the hairline, all I did was I took an inch section, give or take, depending on how the client's growth pattern is again. And I'm just keeping this separate. So it's just 1 inch in front of the face. And what I'm going to end up doing is actually painting it in this direction. So with this, these will be single points again. And really, I'm just trying to create the balance. So it'll probably end up being like 2 single points on each side. And then we go into the side for face framing. So let's show you how to do that. So I'm going to just, the best way again is to make sure that your client is working with you. So make sure if they're at the right height or if they're not at the right height, adjust their head because really you want to be comfortable. Anytime we're painting, if you're not comfortable, odds are your results are going to show it. So what we want to do is we want to be able to over direct the hair because what I'm going to do is take the section and then this is the only time I'm going to use cotton. And the reason I'm going to use cotton here is because I want to protect the client's face. So I'm really just going to be using it for padding when I drop down the section here. So again, we're going to take 2 balayage pieces. This is the face frame balayage. I'm going to, like I mentioned, check in. So I'm using the end of my comb and just creating a little check mark section into that hair. And then this will be my first piece. So I'm going to go ahead and paint here. Another quick tip, if you are using cotton, these fingers tend to be, your pinky and your ring finger tend to be kind of useless when we're painting. We're not using them for much. So it's really great to hold your cotton in between there. That way you don't have to step away and grab something else and you can keep perfect tension and create beautiful painting. So you'll notice with most of my French balayage or all of my balayage in general, I've always got my tools in my hand. I'm never really painting off the board or painting off of like something off to the side. I'm painting off the planchette in hand. And I have my cotton and everything ready. So again, I'm just going to smooth this hair out, pull it back towards her. That way I'm able to create that lightness on the underside. Start in zone 2. Work that single point down into zone 1. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box. I see John is loving this technique. And thank you, John, for showing some love. It's really, really simple. And it's just all about thinking of things in a different way. So again, I think we overanalyze balayage so often. And that is what I love educating on, is how to do it in an easier manner. So here we have this beautiful single point, and now I'm going to take that cotton I pulled from between my pinky, and I'm going to just lightly place it under the hair. And again, the only point of it is for padding. It's to protect the lightener from touching her face. So we really don't need to like place it. You don't want it to absorb the lightener. You just want to lightly put it there. That way it has something to lay onto. And the only reason I'm doing about 2 pieces here is because odds are it would probably fall if we did anything directly in front of the head. But also we're going to start in with the face framing in this next section, which ends up being right about here. So it's going to give you all the lightness we desire around the face. This whole technique is really just to get those bright pieces for a client who does mention that they pull their hair back. This is why it would be really important. So let's go ahead and create that second point. Checking into it, doing about the same size section. And if you're not painting certain hairs and they're in the way, just let them go back to natural fall. because the cleaner, again, we can work, the easier it's going to be. So like checking into that, I'm not going to paint this piece here. We'll keep that for negative space. So I'm going to just put it right back to where it wants to naturally fall. And I'm going to start painting my second point here. So for anybody who joined later, it is really important with French balayage and the technique that I'm teaching right now to start in zone 2. So we refer to zone 1, 2, and 3. By starting in zone 2 with your lightener and working it back into zone 1, it's actually giving you the ability to create that beautiful seamless diffusion of lightness within your coloring. So just want to keep that in mind, because a lot of times people will start right in zone 1, a little too heavy, and then it stays moist the whole process time, and they're not able to get the lightening that they want throughout because they went in so heavy-handed at the first zone. Okay, so we did those two pieces. So now we're just going to do the same exact thing on this side. Because she does part off to the side, the section looks a little bit different. So you'll notice the hair here has kind of fallen out, which is totally okay because we're going to take horizontal sections with the face framing. So we're going to end up getting that lightness in what looks to be a hole right now. It's not. So I'm going to really just break this up and take one more single piece into here, because I know, again, our next section is going to be starting right here at the top. So we just want to make sure we've got a little bit more balance. So it looks like I'm kind of going about every inch, kind of around the hairline right now. And again, when we're balayaging, it looks stripy, but the whole point with surface painting is once it's actually shampooed out, it looks so sun-kissed that you don't see those actual lines that you laid down. So don't let it scare you if you're new to balayaging. Just know that if you're surface painting and you're actually not saturating, it's going to look a lot more natural than it probably looks as you're laying it down. So I'm going to take this section here. Again, just let our hair fall into natural fall wherever it's falling. And you'll notice I'm standing behind. So this is how you're going to want to do this. And if you need the client to tilt their head back, then that's a great thing to ask them to do. Starting in zone 2, working it back to zone 1. And another nice tip about this, and this specific technique right here, the face framing technique, this is really great to use for balayage at the bowl. So that's something else I love doing. And it would just be really just creating those face framing pieces around their hairline at the shampoo bowl. So maybe it's a client who comes in, if you're a generalist, just for a haircut, and they're really interested in balayage and they're going on vacation and maybe they want a little bit more brightness. It's something you can easily do as an add-on service at the bowl. It takes no time, and yeah, you can give them a whole new look. So we did that piece there. So that leaves us with one more single point here in the face framing. So I'm gonna again pick up my cotton, hold it between my fingers, and then check in to this section and get the piece I want. All right, and again, this is a good piece. And the beautiful part about surface painting is it's really, really easy to remove at the bowl. You're not having to comb out a lot of tangled hair because we're just laying it down smoothly onto the surface. So you get really, really beautiful results without having to worry about that or create any unnecessary tension onto the hair. Okay, so we did those pieces. So that was our third section. So just to recap what we did, we started at the nape with our 3 horizontal sections, followed by the pivoting at the crown, then came over and did our single points at the face framing. And now that actually leaves us with our, and I'm sorry, we did the single points at our front hairline, and now that leaves us with our face framing. So this is going to be the majority of the interior of the hair that we haven't lightened yet. So I mentioned she was a side part. So wherever her heaviest side is, so wherever she's parting off to, we're going to focus on using a little bit more triple points on that section. So she parts over here to the right, or to the left view. So I am going to take the sections like that. So you'll see we've done the face framing. So now what we want to do is create another horizontal parting so that we can take care of this hair in the quickest manner working up the head. So what I'm going to do is actually go probably about an inch up. I think an inch is a nice section to work with, or actual sizing when it comes to creating your partings, because we're able to cover a lot of the headspace within that. So this inch is really just everything above the ear. It's about an inch depth. So I'm going to use that. And here, since the mannequin doesn't have too much headspace, this one I'm going to go ahead and just do a double point on. But what you can see is where the hair is falling, this is already falling into her face framing. So you can see it's going to fall directly around her face. And the whole point is to get a brighter result around her face right now. So the only reason I'll do a double, and again, this is where you kind of customize depending on the client that you're working with. Hi, Morgan. You want to just go ahead and decide whether you want to do your double point or your triple point. That way it saves you the most time, because we know time is money. So I'm not going to use the cotton anymore. I'm just going to go ahead and continue painting, and I'm going to actually go back to my regular balayage brush now. That way I can pick up more product. So this will be my first horizontal section. This will be the face framing. And again, we're going to start in zone 2, work our way back up into zone 1. And then you have the option of either just doing perfect points, or like I mentioned, really diffusing that lightener and filling in all of that negative space in here. So depending on your results, if you're looking for something brighter, we would want to fill in the negative space. If we're looking to keep more dimension, then we're going to want to drag our points down deeper and keep all of that negative space in here. With this mannequin and this demo, because she is going to be a little bit brighter around her face. That's our goal, since she has a bit of a root shadow and we want a seamless balayage. I'm going to go ahead and just work the product up. So I'm going to actually completely paint the surface of this section here. And again, if you want to make sure it's completely clean, use the end of your brush as an eraser. And you notice there's no lightener on the underside of this hair. So that's the goal, is just a surface paint. And that's what is the difference between a traditional balayage and a French balayage, aside from using the perforated wrap and cotton. And again, I'm not using the perforated wrap today because I'm using a clay lightener that's already starting to encapsulate on its own. All right, so we've got that. So now I'm going to go into the double or triple point. So I'm going to actually switch the rotation. So we're not going to continue with the horizontal here. We're going to go horizontal, and then we're going to go diagonal forward. I think that with this headspace, that section would make the most sense. And with everything going on, looking at it, I've got a lot of bright pieces coming into here. So to balance that, I'm going to let the hair speak to me here, and I'm going to just go ahead and take that. And again, if you notice, it's created a V for me. And anytime we're balayaging and doing a French balayage, we're looking for that padding when we're surface painting. So by having that V there, it's giving me a perfect horizontal area to paint here. So let it kind of speak to you so you can work smarter, not harder, because really less is more when it comes to balayage, that's for sure. So here I'm going to go in, and I will slightly check into this hair, but with checking into it, I'm going to actually just make sure I'm getting it from point to point. So I'm only leaving some of it down just for a bit of that negative space and balance. But again, I'm going to paint this whole surface, but we're going to do a triple point versus full saturation here. So I'm going to go ahead and start in zone 2, work my way back up into zone 1, slightly feathering it with a softer touch. And that in turn is going to give me a much smoother color transition and diffusion of that color. Okay, and now we're going to go in and create our third point. All right, and then that ends up being, you can see, just a nice diffused triple point there. So this is only 2 sections around the face framing. Could probably do it in about 4 off to the heavy side. We'll probably just be working with our next section in a heavier triple point. So now we are from the front all the way up to the eyebrow on this side, and that's only 2 sections. This is really, really easy to execute. I'm going to go back to the original horizontal that we had mentioned, But now with this horizontal, since I did do my face frame pieces, I'm taking into consideration where that hair lives now. So if you notice where I took this section, I'm really just taking it right off to the side of that point I already created. So when her hair is pulled back, I know she's got lightness there, and now the brightness is going to come from here dropping down. So it's just being, again, really mindful of where the hair lives and not just trying to get in there and create a lot of painting, because a lot of times that's how we lose that beautiful sun-kissed look when it is just overlaid. So here's our horizontal section. This we're going to do in a triple point. So I will check into it again, keeping corner to corner. That way I have the brightness around her face. All right. Okay, and then here we'll go in again, triple point for zone 2, working our way up to zone 1. And here's where you can kind of play with it a little more. So like you'll notice with this first point I'm laying down, I'm going to go a little bit thicker with it, knowing most women want that money piece. They want it brighter around their face. So at this point, I'm going to go pretty heavy-handed with it. So you can see I started from that corner, but I'm already almost all the way across the section here into zone 2 before even applying my second point. So again, that's where it's totally customizable to you depending on what you're looking for with the client. So this point, I'm going to do just a tad bit smaller. And then to break it up so that we don't have that negative space or heavier root right around your hair, I'm going to create a teeny balayage point here in there to make this a triple. So we're just going to work it up a little bit. And you can see it's a little bit more dragged out, but I still have that negative space in here and here, and it's created that triple point. So now I know we'll have brightness underneath, even when she pulls her hair back. And I'll drop that down. So now our next section, so we went horizontal, diagonal forward. Yep. Now we're going to go into our next section, and this is where we need to take into consideration where the part is and how much more hair we have. So you can see this is about, it's about 2 inches left on top of her head off to the part. So we're going to take this in 2 sections to make sure that we're getting everything. And these I will work horizontally, so we'll take the technique horizontal off to the side, due to the fact that this client does in fact wear her hair to a heavy part. We already know that, so it's all right to work with horizontal because it's already going to be a natural fall that way, and that's what's going to give her that brightness. All right, so then this will be the section I'll paint now, and this will be just a traditional triple point as well. And you always want to make sure if you are checking into the hair that you have the perfect section, so you're not going into the balayage section you did before. So this should be good for me now. Yep, dropping it down. All right, so I'm going to have one more horizontal section, and that's going to be off the part line once we finish this section here. So this I'm going to do a little bit thicker again here in the front. This will be a triple point again. And I really enjoy using the product I am using right now. And again, you can use whatever it is you're comfortable with painting. But if you notice something different with what I'm using, it's extremely stretchy and it's making it really easy for me to lay it down. So for me, this has been my favorite to paint with lately. I know a lot of people aren't too fond of clay lighteners. There's so many on the market. But this has been really a seamless application due to the consistency of the actual product. So I think product choices are really important, especially when it comes to French balayage and wanting a smooth, seamless technique. I see we have a question in the box. I'm going to step back for a second. Reach all over my shirt, normal day. Would you start with a lower volume peroxide and increase to a higher volume as you work towards the top? Absolutely. So a lot of times, and again, depending on how much hair they have and what we're doing, I'll start with the 20 volume and then I'll change to a 30 volume, or I'll mix in small batches and then go back. But a lot of times, if you're new to painting or it's taking you a little bit longer to do a full head of balayage because maybe they have a ton of hair, then that is a great idea to switch to volume. That way it's a little bit more rapid towards the end. Okay, so this last section here that I said was off to the part line, and this is her off-center part. I'm not going to apply the balayage points into it yet because I'm all about creating balance and making sure that the color complements each other off to the part. So I'm going to go ahead and paint this side to get it caught up with that side, and then we'll finish the top at the same time. So again, this was our face framing section here. And so it's about probably going to be, since this is off to the part, probably 3 sections. So it probably won't be too much. So we have those off to the side. I'm going to start with the horizontal again. And that's about 1 inch depth. So we'll start with 1 horizontal section, and I'm going to paint off the horizontal. And this, we will do what we did on the opposite side. So that was a double point. And I saturated it. I mean, I didn't saturate it. I'm sorry. I actually diffused it quite high. That way we have the brightness. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing here. That way it is balanced. All right, so this is where I'll create the diffusion. So I'm still keeping my tension really nice, but I'm just going up and just diffusing it a little bit more. That way we have that brightness. And these are all the fun things you get to play with once you feel comfortable with that application and just surface painting in general. Then you can create your single, double, triple point, ultimate diffusion, whatever you're looking to do a lot more comfortably when you know how to actually lay it down smoothly. So, okay. Here is our next section. So now we will go with, on the opposite side, it was a diagonal forward. Again, I'm just going to look at the head shape. This one might end up being right now a diagonal back. And the reason I say that is because of where the front hairline piece is coming in here, but then also the way this section is falling. So like I mentioned with the whole V section or checking into it, this is always a good sign. What angle, go that way so you can see the square, what angle to take your horizontals or diagonal front at. So since this is already looking like a V section, I'm going to go from corner to corner here and create that horizontal. So this is going to end up being the surface that I actually paint once I drop that down. So we'll do a triple point here, and then it's going to leave me with this last section on top, which we will pivot off the part line. That way it doesn't look like a highlight. And I'll show you how we like to do that as well. So here again, easy, easy, easy. My section is already laid out for me. I'm going to just check into it. Actually, I'm going to clean up this part a tad bit. Okay, we're just going to check into it. And I'm always coming from the highest point, especially when I know that they're looking for brightness around the face. All right, I like that section better, and I like the way that space is falling. And again, like this is what I'm talking about with the seamless results. You want to kind of look at what you've got going on pre-existing. So step back from it, because what stands out to you, again, is going to open up and end up looking seamless. So it's good to have that negative space, but it's also good to not be so up in your balayaging. That way you're able to actually have a different perspective on the color you're doing. And 9 times out of 10, you don't need to put in as many pieces as you have. So here I'm going to go ahead, and this will be my triple point. So we will start right here, zone 2, working up into zone 1, creating balance off to the other side. So starting in zone 2, working up to zone 1 and being a little bit heavier here because I know it's going to be around her face framing. Okay, before I completely slide down into zone 3, I'm just going and creating that triple point in here and then diffusing that lightener down the strand. All right, so then that leaves us with our 2 sections on the part line. And you can see that when I drop it down, we're really just going to have just these 2 sections. So it's not even a full inch, it's about a ½ inch of hair there, even in that section. So we're going to be able to get a little bit more brightness there, but now is where we want to pay attention to, again, how everything's falling. So here, I didn't paint this piece around her face, so I'm going to be very mindful now to make sure that this is one of my points I create off to that side. So I'm going to go a little bit heavier on that side. Here, I'm going to just lay down the points and we'll balance it out off to the next side. So here we go. So my horizontal is pretty much already here for me. I'm not afraid of the depth in here kind of falling out because again, it's going to all just balance once it's done. So right now I'm just really trying to make sure that everything from the crown and then into the hairline comes together. So this is going to be the section I take. Again, checked into it. And here I'm going to create a triple point as well, but this time I'm going to go a little bit smaller with these 2 points. That way it transitions a little bit more naturally towards the back of the head where it won't be quite as bright. So we'll go a little thicker here. Sorry, I think I blocked my camera off. So here I'm going to go a little finer. So it's a thicker point to a finer point in the back, and then I'm going to connect it with kind of a medium-sized point in here. So I'm working with 3 different size points just to create a little bit more dimension, but then also to create balance moving towards the back of the head, what's previously been done. And again, that was a great question, John, with the developers, because I definitely would be using a lower developer if I was starting in the back of the head, knowing it was going to sit longer. So she's a mannequin, and for technique purposes, I'm all right with it. So, and then that actually is what finalizes the French Balayage, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's a glossing service that provides vinyl shine, and it's basically a 2-step lightening and gloss service that L'Oreal Professional refers to as a French balayage. So again, it's just a little bit different than American balayage because it's a completely different technique and the way we speak about the points. Okay, so now I'm gonna just kind of show it off to the camera. So here you see we had those 3 points. So now my goal is to, when I'm applying here around the hairline, I need to make sure that they're not connecting. So I wouldn't do point, 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 like those 3, because it would end up looking like a highlight. So I'm gonna probably do a point here. I'll probably do 2 double points, and I'm gonna stagger them so that they're off to the side of that lightening piece there, if that makes sense. So here, this will be my first section. So this is directly off her part. And I'm gonna actually do this one off to the side again, and body positioning is everything. So however you're more comfortable, make sure you can get that angle to actually paint that piece. So here, like I said, I'm gonna break it into 2. You know what, I'm not going to break it into 2 because I like how that's falling there. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just over direct this so I can get a little bit brighter here. But I'm going to do this in 1 section. So it is going to be 1 section like I had originally planned. So I'm not even going to check into it because I want to just lightly brush the whole surface of this to create a little bit more brightness, again, because it's at the top of the head. And I know this can be kind of scary for some people, but this is kind of similar to the face framing. So you want to be behind the client when we're applying it so that we can get this brighter piece in here. So this is almost like a 3-dimensional balayage because I'm going to paint here, and then I'm going to change my body position, and I'm going to create that flat surface here. But at the same time, I'm going to have this underside painted So it's just another way to look at your application and how you're applying. So I'm gonna just make sure I have that smooth edge here, work it back into zone 1. Okay, and now that I have that just applied there, now I'm gonna shift my body position again. So now you see it's on the underside, and now I'm actually gonna paint the top surface. So here I'm gonna do 1 point, and I'll bring it closer to the camera once I have them applied, because I wanna make sure that I stagger them appropriately. So this will be a triple point. And then this is going to be my final point, which is actually kind of connecting what I painted on the underside. So it's going to be a lot brighter for the client when she drops her hair down. So I'm going to just try to turn it off to the side so you can kind of see how that happens. So before I finish zone 2 and zone 3, that is the way that I'm staggering those balayage pieces so that they're not directly off the part line together. So now I'm going to do exactly what I did on the opposite side, since we did actually kind of paint it a little bit more. I'm going to leave about the same amount of negative space at the top, but I'm going to surface paint through zone 2 and zone 3 here. Okay. And again, body position and the angle of your brush is everything, as well as your product choice. So you really want to make sure you're using something that you can easily paint with if you are looking to paint the surface. All right, so that brings us to our final section. So literally, that was just 4 sections in under an hour with talking the whole time, which ends up being a full head of balayage. Looks a little funny the way it's falling right now because it's all off to one side. But once this is actually rinsed out and then glossed with an ammonia-free gloss, it's going to provide a ton of shine and neutralization and balance, and that is what we like to call French balayage in the L'Oreal professional world. So again, whatever you're using, you can use, but we like to do it in the 2 steps. And what I'm using, I see John had a question. What I was using now is new from L'Oreal Professional. It's the only clay lightener, so it's called Blonde Studio 7. And it actually has the highest amount of clay on the market at the time right now. So it's a 19% clay lightener, which gives it a really, really stretchy texture. And you can see, like, even though I mixed this over an hour ago, it doesn't swell. Like, it doesn't end up growing in your bowl, and it just stays really, really stretchy and makes it really easy to work with. So I'm really liking that. And then I just used it with a 30 volume so I can see the most amount of lift during this short time. So like I mentioned, the second step of a French balayage is really just to seal the cuticle. My product of choice for that is always DL Light because it's ammonia-free and it provides a ton of shine. So anytime I'm lightening, if I can go ammonia-free, I will. And that's the other thing with the Blonde Studio 7, it's also ammonia-free. So it's just another really great option for anybody that's concerned about the integrity of their hair. Do we have any other questions about anything? And again, to just go back over it, so we did our 4 sections in the nape that were just horizontal, and we did those into triple points, followed by a horizontal 2-section double point, followed by another horizontal section with 2 sides of triple points, and then we pivoted off the crown according to the growth pattern. And then separately over-directed the face framing, and then created the front hairline pieces as well. And I'm sorry, I keep saying face framing. The front hairline pieces we over-directed, and then we went and filled in the face framing. So this is a super easy technique that can be executed in under an hour behind the chair. And I really hope that you were able to take away a couple of techniques from today. And even if it's not all 4 of them, it could be one of them that you can apply in a different fashion, or maybe with something you're already doing. So again, thank you so much for being here. My name is Stephanie Cashmere with L'Oreal Professional, and I appreciate having you guys spend your time with me. I look forward to seeing you in salons. Thank you.